I legitimately don't hate a single soul. I'm not just saying that because I'm a Christian. I don't have anybody that I hate, that I even really dislike. I mean, generally I like everybody. It's just how thankfully God made me. But the story I'm about to tell you, if I did not like somebody and I had an enemy, I would not wish it on them. I've talked about this a little bit in the past in one of my other videos, but I didn't give the full story. It was kind of like I was just going through this whole timeline of horrible things that have happened to me, it seems like. So I wanted to share a little bit more about myself and my past experience and what I've gone through in hopes that maybe sometimes when we hear other people that have suffered what we may be suffering through, it helps. So, with that, I want to talk about the loss of my son. Um, Very hard time. I've kind of delayed putting this video out or making this video just because it is hard to talk about, even though I ruminate on it a lot. I do think about it often, and it's almost like a focal point of when things really started to go bad in my life, away from God. So basically, to start the story, we had been close to God, my ex-wife and I, and we were growing in faith, and God had blessed me with this incredible opportunity to where I was able to start writing sales letters, marketing from home, and I was making crazy money. Like I had a $10 an hour job before that, and all of a sudden I'm rolling, in $2,000-3,000 a week. So it was awesome, and that was just getting going. So she quit her job because before that we had both had to work. Each of us would work a job, and while one was working, the other was staying home with the child, our son. So, anyways, she was able to quit work. She had dreams of being a stay-at-home mom. I was happy to provide and just be the sole provider and let her pursue her dream while I was doing mine, which was writing. I was like, wow, like I may not be writing fiction, but I'm writing something and I'm getting paid very well for it. So she wanted a new house. She thought, well, we have a 3 bedroom. We had our bedroom, we had our son's bedroom, and then we had my office. With a new child, she's like, why don't we get him his own bedroom? He'll be a baby, won't disturb our son. So, okay, so she picked out a place and we moved in. And she was late term pregnancy at this point. She was 9 months. We moved in, and I don't remember exactly how long we had moved in, but it wasn't long. And we had this room that was decorated as, it was going to be his room. And she went to the doctor. I remember she was at a point in the pregnancy where she was going weekly to the doctor. They would, check her dilation, they would check the heartbeat, blah, blah, blah. Well, she gave me a call that they couldn't find the heartbeat. And I remember, I believe somebody told me it was, and I'm like, well, what does that mean? Like, I hadn't even gone there in my head yet. She's like, well, I don't know. She said that it might be something else. They want to run another test. He might be in a weird position, blah, blah, blah. But I think you should come down. So, wow. So I went down to the hospital. I believe she's at the hospital. Maybe they brought her there to do a deeper, to find the heartbeat. And by the time I got there, she already knew. They'd already told her that they couldn't find the heartbeat and that he was no longer living. So, um, obviously, I believe I was just kind of in shock. I couldn't imagine that this had happened to us. And I had fallen away from God. I had not, once I started making the money, I just kind of like, wow, I've got everything. I'm good. So, um, I remember they told us, we were like, well, what do we do now? Like, and they're like, you have to deliver him. And I remember just my heart sinking for my ex at the time, my wife, just thinking like, how is this even going to go? Like, how does this work? How does she do this? You go through so much pain and so much energy expended and stuff to deliver a baby with the thought of, wow, I'll have my child and I'll look him in the eye finally, or her in the eye. But there was no reward for this for her. And I just, man, like I remember the doctor told her, we'll give you morphine, we'll give you whatever you need, just because they realized that she was going to be in emotional pain too, I think. But she's like, no. And, they had offered, I think they offered me stuff too, if I recall correctly. We're like, what do you need? Like, but I remember just thinking we both want to remember this. Like, this is going to be our only opportunity to really see him. We're missing out on so much. And I knew, like, it was sinking in that I knew we were going to be missing so much. Like, this was going to be our one chance to meet him, yet he was no longer present in his body. So we went through the delivery. She delivered him, and I had been strong. I had really held it together up until the point when he came out. And I remember just looking at him, looking at the doctor's face, who he was not looking good either. And then looking at my wife's face, and I remember just going, like, just falling apart. I remember collapsing on her and just crying. We both were just sitting there sobbing together. The doctor and nurses were crying too. It was just, man. I think it was Mother's Day too. It happened on Mother's Day. Horrible. The day before. I don't, it's such a blur. But it's just, man, like, you talk about pain, and then as a man, you want to protect your children. You want to make sure your children are okay. And I felt like I had let down the family as protector. Like, I'd let down my wife. I'd let down my son. I didn't keep him alive. Like, not that I could have done anything. There was an umbilical cord around his neck, but I just felt this sense of, man, I did not do what I was supposed to do. So, obviously, that was rough. I remember that they brought him out, his body out, to clean him up, and then dressed him in clothes to bring him in to spend time with us, and we took photos of us together with this baby's body. Just he wasn't even in the body anymore. But it was the only experience we were going to have, and they kept telling us this is the way that you'll have some kind of, closure, I guess, to it. But we took those pictures. I remember she left the hospital. Of course, we were just, both of us, destroyed. She left the hospital. I remember we had all of the keepsakes from that. Like, I think they cut a piece of hair out. The thing is, the reason I don't remember is because we put all of this into a bag and then just put it away in the closet. Like, we didn't want to look at it again. It was just too... The amount of pain that I felt at that point. I've lost my dad. I have had, my illness that happened to me, losing my wife, my family. Nothing at all compares to what I felt during that time. That was just... I don't think that I'm the same person having had that happen to me that I would have been, or that I was before it happened. It was almost like a, that high water mark where it was just like, this is where things changed. I started the writing business, and I had to work. I brought a lot of work in. I was paying a bigger, payment each month for the house and new furniture, and, man, so... But then again, my wife needed me, and I don't know that I could write at that point. I remember just being destroyed, but I remember putting all my energy into her, like, because she started having this thought that it was her fault that he had died, that she should have felt the warning signs, and she knew something was wrong from her intuition, and that she should have gone to the doctor immediately, and they could have saved him. So that germ of an idea spread in her head and started becoming bigger and bigger, to where she full on said it was her fault. She killed the baby. I remember her saying that, crying, and it was heartbreaking to hear, because she didn't. I kept telling her, if you would have known, you would have done something different, but you didn't know. Like, you would have, if you knew that was the outcome, you would have gone to the doctor. You didn't know that. You didn't know. There was no way to know. So, I spent a long while with her, just comforting her through her depression. Then I had to get back to work, and I remember going back to my office, which I hadn't been in a while because I'd been comforting her for weeks, and I remember not being able to focus on work, and I think at that point was when I started dealing with my own grief and trying to resolve that in my head, which was a whole nother battle, because, like I said, those thoughts I had of just not protecting my family and not doing what I should have been doing. So that was bad. That was really bad. My wife fell into a bad depression, to where I remember we had our younger son, Paul, and he was about a year old, 2 years old, and I ended up having to take care of him, trying to grieve, or go through my grief and work through that, and then take care of my ex-wife at the point because she was just sitting in our bedroom with the curtains drawn. It was pitch black in there, and I just remember going in and laying with her and crying on the bed together. She didn't come out anymore. She didn't interact with any of us aside from just when I would go in to talk to her. Kept blaming herself. She was non-functional at all. Points where I was getting scared for her safety. It was a lot because the business had, I had to pay the bills. So I wasn't. I was falling apart. And at some point, even while she was still in this depression, she decided that she wanted to have another baby. It was maybe 9 months after. She was still bedridden, with the depression, not coming out of the room much. But she decided, let's have another baby. That she's like, I think that will help me to recover from this. I don't know that I thought about whether or not it would. I just thought I want to try to make my wife happy. And so we tried, and she got pregnant again. And I remember the hormones must have done something to her because she was back functioning again. She was happy again, or maybe it was just that she knew she had life in her again and had another chance. So, of course, we were overly cautious with my younger son. We were like going to the hospital all the time, freaking out, and every little thing was like, boom, go to the hospital. Let's go to the hospital. But he was born healthy. A scary story there was because the doctor who had delivered our deceased child delivered our younger son, who came like, whatever it was, 18 months after or so. And I remember she was giving birth, and the heart rate, they have a heart rate monitor, and it started decelerating. It was getting lower, really low. And I was looking at the doctor's face. He looked really concerned, and I was, of course, freaking out because I'm like, this cannot happen again. Like, not on my watch. So I tried to keep my ex at the time, my wife at the time, occupied, not paying attention to it. But the doctor's face was saying the story that we were in trouble. Got my son out in time. He did have some problems because of this. He had, I believe it's cerebral palsy, but it sounds like, some kind of starvation of oxygen to me. But I knew the doctor was thinking like, this can't happen again to these people or on his watch. So, thankfully he's healthy. Somewhat healthy. He's alive. He's with us. He's an amazing child. Amazing. Like, God did really bless us with both of our children. But Cole, my younger, came at a different time where it was kind of like he's a very little wise soul. They're both very smart, very intelligent kids I have. They're amazing. I love them so much. But Cole almost, I don't know, he came along. It was like never a problem. My older son was kind of like me in that we're both, we both could be a little bit of trouble. So, I understand Paul, but Cole was different than me in a way that he was like me in ways, but at the same time he was so gentle. He is so gentle, and he was just so easy. You never had to reprimand him at all. But he came along, and my wife at the time fell back into the depression after she delivered. She usually suffered from like postpartum, so this one hit her hard, and back in the bedroom. So I was basically taking care of our 2-year-old, a newborn, trying to work the business and trying to take care of my wife. I remember we'd fight a lot. There was so much grief. There was so much checking out, like both of us checking out with our kids because we were just overwhelmed with what was happening inside of our hearts. And I know I didn't give them the attention they needed. I was so, not only my own emotions, but just so stretched thin, and she wasn't able to because of her depression. And we would fight a lot. We would get into fights. And I remember thinking like, we can't divorce because if we divorce, like that's like almost saying the death of our child, if he's aware, and I don't believe he is aware, maybe he is, but I don't believe he is aware, like his soul is aware of what's happening. But I felt like if we divorced because of that, like what a horrible thing to kind of put on him, maybe, like, I don't know, but it was a very difficult time. And this was in, it's hard to remember, I believe 2002. The grief doesn't go away. It just changes. Sometimes it gets a little bit easier, but when something like that happens, it, like I said, it changes you. And I have so many thoughts, so many regrets of how I went through those things. My ex is doing better now. She still, of course, suffers from grief, but man, like to anybody that's had to suffer that, I don't know. I've tried to think about what would be worse, if it would have been worse to have met him and actually got to know him and speak to him and develop that relationship, and then I've lost him, or if it was worse that I never had that opportunity, I never had the chance to meet him. I don't know which is worse. My heart goes out to anybody that's lost a child. That's just that's next level kind of punch in the face, you know. It is. It's insane. I know God was with me. This was kind of my comeback to God. I took a lot. I'd fallen away, and it took a lot for God to bring me back. But part of it was when he died. I had my wife was inside her own feelings, so I had nobody to go to, and I didn't have any friends in Colorado. That's where we lived, so I had God. I went back to God and said, "Please help me through this." And I remember burying our son at the funeral, and the pastor reading something about God is with you to comfort you in your grief. And as soon as he said that, it thundered like this loud rip of thunder, and then started pouring down rain, like if he had said that God is sharing in your grief. And it was, he even commented on it like, wow, like God is with us. So and the sun came out like right after that. Of course it did happen. That did happen in Colorado at times, but it felt like a definitive sign to me that something had happened and God was with me. And that started my long climb back, which, you know, I needed more. I needed the illness that happened to me, which had me down for 15 years, and to lose everything to come back to God. But he is good, and he's always there, and he's always forgiving. And no matter how far we fall, he's always waiting for us with open arms, you know, the prodigal son. So that is my story about this. I just want to let anybody know that if you have suffered that, I understand, and I can't imagine your pain. I wish I could say something that would help, but all I can say is that I do understand. And there's, you know, I did use a support group for a while. I kind of stayed out of it. My wife at the time went to it more than I did, just because I was like closing in on myself, like just shutting down, trying to process, trying to figure out what had happened. I think I feel things pretty deeply. So I'm going to leave it at that. Wow, what a way to set a mood for myself for the rest of the day. Yeah, that's very intense. So any questions, comments, anybody that can relate to this, go ahead and comment below if you like. And that's it, guys. That's my tale of woe, part of it. Just wanted to share with you guys, and hopefully somebody can feel something from my story. That's all for now, guys. Thank you, and God bless.